Some shifts pass like a breath, quiet, unremarkable. And then there are the others. The ones that never leave you. Not because you got burned or pulled someone out on your back, but because something inside you shifts. Something permanent. This story began on an ordinary night. It was just past 1:30 in the morning. Outside our fire station, the March air hung heavy and cool. Not quite cold, but enough to make you pull your collar up. The city was wrapped in fog and silence, like even the sky wanted to rest. We'd been on duty for nearly 2 days straight. The fatigue was there, settled in the shoulders, behind the eyes. But it was the kind of tired we knew well, like an old scar. I was in the rec room with Vince, Jake, and Scott. We were killing time with a few rounds of Uno, an old deck missing corners and half the rules. A ritual at this point. Something to keep the mind from drifting too far into waiting. Too far into thoughts you shouldn't entertain between calls. Scott tossed a card and grinned. That's game, Sergeant. You're slipping. I rolled my eyes, reaching for my half-cold coffee. Command comes with sacrifices. Then came the alarm. A sharp, jarring sound that sliced through the night like a blade. The loudspeaker followed. Structure fire. Residential. Possible occupants inside. West Hill District. Cross streets, 7th and Clark. Repeat. Possible people trapped inside. Time broke. The cards hit the floor. Chairs scraped back. Nobody spoke. We moved. Boots, gear, hoods, masks. Everything automatic. Hands remembered what minds had no time to process. I was behind the wheel of Engine 3. Vince rode shotgun, flipping through the map book. Jake and Scott were in back, tightening straps, checking tanks. The engine roared to life as we peeled out of the station, sirens tearing across the sleeping streets. House fire at this hour, Vince muttered. People might still be inside. Probably asleep. That stuck. Sleep is the worst time to meet fire. It's when you're most vulnerable. When seconds matter most. As we sped through the dark, I watched the sky change. A soft, unnatural glow began to rise beyond the rooftops. A distant orange flicker that didn't belong. Then we turned onto Clark. The glow became fire. It was a small, single-story house. Flames had already devoured the roof. Fire tore through the attic and out the windows like it had been waiting for this. Heat shimmered the air. Glass popped. Wood cracked. The night was lit with dancing reds and golds, and the roar of it all was deafening. I braked hard, stopping across the street. No time for words. I stepped out, and that's when I saw her. A woman, barefoot, in a nightgown, standing alone in the street. She was shaking, her eyes wild with terror. Her face stained with soot and tears. She kept stumbling forward, toward the fire, arms outstretched. Her mouth opened, but the words that came out were broken, panicked. Save them. Please. Save them. Over and over. Like a prayer. I rushed to her, grabbed her shoulders. Ma'am, who's inside? How many? Children? Is anyone trapped? She didn't answer. She didn't hear me. Just kept screaming. Save them. Please save them. Then she tore away from me, sprinting toward the burning porch. Scott and I caught her just in time. She was fighting us with every ounce of her strength, screaming like someone was tearing her soul in two. It took both of us to drag her back. Her voice was hoarse, but she wouldn't stop. They're in there. Save them. Please. I turned to my crew. Masks on. We go in through the back. Now, we didn't know who was inside. Didn't know if they were children, elderly, even human. But none of that mattered. Someone was inside that fire. Someone whose breath, whose life, now depended on us. We threw on our oxygen masks. Checked airflow. Sealed our helmets. I adjusted my tank. Vince did the same. The hiss of air filled my ears as I inhaled pure oxygen. Last breath of safety before stepping into chaos. Flashlights on. Axes slung. We moved fast, flanking the house toward the back entrance. The fire roared louder now, like it sensed us coming. One more deep breath. Then we kicked the door open and stepped into hell. The back of the house had a small wooden deck, half collapsed, smoldering at the edges. Each step creaked under our boots, threatening to give way. Smoke poured from the doorframe, curling and clawing at the sky like fingers of something alive. The door itself was ajar. It must have been the way the woman got out. Through that same opening, the heat pushed outward like breath from a furnace. The air was thick, damp, heavy, angry. Vince and I locked eyes, nodded. No need for words. We double-checked our oxygen masks. The tanks hissed with life as the air flowed. Flashlights on. Tools ready. I pulled my hood tight, heart already pounding, not from fear, but from knowing this might be a race we couldn't afford to lose. Then I pushed the door open with my shoulder, and we stepped inside. The world went dark. Smoke swallowed everything. Not the kind that floats, but the kind that hangs dense, suffocating, drowning. It was like walking blindfolded into a cave filled with fire. My flashlight cut a narrow path, but it barely helped. I dropped low, feeling the floor, using the wall for guidance. Vince, left. I'll take right, I said through the mask. We moved. The layout was tight, an older home, rooms packed together like shoeboxes. Wood frame, dry walls, narrow doorways. A death trap in fire. Every second mattered. The heat was growing. We had to crawl in parts. I could feel it through my gloves, the angry throb of flame all around us. Floorboards groaned like they were trying to speak one last time. Fire department. I shouted. Is anyone here? Call out. Silence. Just crackling wood, and the hiss of fire chewing through a ceiling we couldn't see. I pushed deeper into the house. First room, empty. A toppled lamp, photos on the floor. Next, a hallway. Paint bubbling off the walls. I ducked into what looked like a child's bedroom. Toys scattered. A small bed. No one there. The air was boiling now. My mask was fogging from the inside. Somewhere above, a beam collapsed with a sharp crack. Then I heard Vince's voice through the radio. Bedroom clear. No one. Kitchen's empty too. Moving to the front. I called back. The smoke grew even thicker. The flashlight barely worked. Each breath was a fight, even with the oxygen tank. The heat pressed in, a weight on my back. We were running out of time. I ducked through a narrow hallway and into what must have been the foyer. My gut told me we had minutes, maybe less, before the ceiling caved. We need to pull out. I shouted. There's no one in. Then came Vince's voice. But it wasn't calm. It was sharp. Urgent. Charlie. Here. Quick. I found someone. I turned and ran. Through the smoke, through the doorframe, over a fallen chair. His flashlight flickered in the haze. He was crouched in the far corner of the front entryway, next to a collapsed piece of furniture. Over here, he said, and even through his mask, I heard the shake in his voice. I knelt beside him, shining my light low, and froze. It was a dog. A large one. A yellow Labrador, maybe. She was curled around something, her chest rising and falling in shallow, ragged breaths. Her body trembled, her coat blackened with soot. She was barely conscious. And beneath her tiny movements, puppies. 5, 6, maybe more. Pressed against her belly, wriggling faintly. Their eyes still closed. Their bodies slick and pink and fragile. The mother had shielded them with her own body. Stayed behind. Covered them with her life. I felt something catch in my throat. That instant, the sight of her, still protecting them as the world burned, will live in me forever. Take them, I said. We're getting them out. All of them. Vince stripped off his outer jacket. We placed the puppies inside, gently, one by one. Each one was warm, alive, whimpering. Then we lifted the mother. She didn't resist. Just a soft exhale, as if she was letting go of everything but trust. The ceiling creaked again. No time. We ran. Out the hallway, through the smoke, stumbling as heat clawed at our backs. I held the jacket to my chest like it was full of gold. Vince carried the mother cradled in his arms, as gently as if she were a child. As we burst back into the night, the house behind us gave one final groan, and the roof collapsed in a thunderous roar. Sparks flew into the sky like dying stars. Flames rushed upward in frustration. But we were out. And we weren't alone. We burst out of that house like it had spit us out. Smoke chased behind us in angry gray coils. Our boots hit the ground hard, legs weak from the heat, lungs screaming for clean air, even through the masks. The night felt ice cold by comparison, even though it was still warm. It was the contrast. The relief. I dropped to my knees, cradling the jacket in my arms like it was holding something sacred. Inside, the puppy squirmed, alive, warm, and making tiny, high-pitched sounds that barely registered over the chaos. Vince carefully lowered the mother dog onto a tarp the medics had just laid out. Her breathing was shallow, her body limp, but she was still with us. The second engine had arrived, and the crew was hard at work hitting the flames from all sides. Water blasted into the windows in sharp, rhythmic bursts, fighting to tame what remained of the blaze. The house groaned in protest, timber collapsing inward, flames still flaring along the eaves. One of the firefighters from the backup crew ran over, blinking through the smoke. What? Who did you bring out? I looked up and slowly opened the jacket. The puppies blinked under the flashlight beam, one reaching up to nuzzle my glove. Another let out a faint whimper, its voice barely stronger than a whisper. The firefighter dropped to a crouch, stunned. Puppies. They're alive. Yeah, I said. And so is the mother. She was lying over them. Covered them. His face shifted. Shock gave way to something deeper. Reverence. The paramedics rushed in then. One of them, Mary, a seasoned medic who had worked with us more times than I could count, immediately took charge. She had her oxygen kit out in seconds, checking the mother dog's pulse, her pupils, her lungs. She's in shock. Dehydrated. Starting to go hypothermic from evaporation. Mary's voice trembled slightly. But she's holding on. The puppies were still clinging to each other, wriggling under the edge of the tarp. One crawled across its sibling and curled up beside its mother's leg. The woman, the owner, had been sitting with another paramedic on the curb, but the moment she saw what we carried out, she stood up as if pulled by a string. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared, wide-eyed, walking forward like she was in a dream. She dropped to her knees beside the tarp, gently placed her hand on the dog's head. "Leah," she whispered. "Oh my God, Leah." The dog opened one eye, slow and weak. Her tail moved just enough to leave a line in the soot-covered tarp. I knelt next to them, still holding one of the puppies. It nuzzled my thumb, and I realized my hands were shaking. I had been on dozens of calls. I'd pulled people out of wrecks, carried children out of burning apartments. But this was different. This wasn't just survival. It was sacrifice. Instinct. Love in its rawest, purest form. The woman said nothing else. Just kept stroking Leah's head as the puppies curled closer. Her breath came in short gasps. Not panic, something else. Something wordless. A quiet kind of grief. Or maybe relief. Mary placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. "She's going to need fluids. But she's a fighter. She made it." I stood slowly, trying to process what I was feeling. Not pride, though there was that. Not joy, exactly. But something bigger. Something deeper. The feeling of having pulled a thread of light out of darkness. Vince joined me. He looked exhausted. His jacket was half unzipped, helmet scratched. His eyes locked on the woman and her dog. "That's something you don't see every day," he said. "No," I replied. "That's something you never forget." Behind us, the house was still smoking. The roof had collapsed in the center, flames finally losing their strength. But in that moment, I didn't care what was lost. Because we had saved something that mattered. When the fire finally gave up, it didn't happen all at once. It faded slowly, sputtering and spitting like something that couldn't admit it lost. The water hammered what remained of the walls, steam rising like ghosts from the wreckage. The roof had caved entirely, the house now just a shell of blackened beams and scorched memories. But around us, silence. That strange kind of silence that only comes after chaos. The kind you don't trust right away. Like the world is holding its breath. We moved through it carefully. Gathering hoses, rolling gear, checking the rig. None of us spoke much. Everything had slowed. After an adrenaline spike that high, everything else feels muffled, like walking underwater. The house was still hissing. Smoke curled from it, seems like it was exhaling. But it was over. I walked over to the remains of the front yard. There, among the ash and mud, was a wooden sign, burned at the edges, but still intact. It bore the family's name, and beneath it, a carved image of a dog. Hand-painted. Maybe by a child. Maybe by her. I picked it up and brushed it off. The woman was still sitting by the ambulance, her arms wrapped around Leah and the puppies, wrapped in a blanket now. Her eyes were red, her hair wet from sweat and mist. But her grip on the animals was firm, gentle, but fierce. I walked over, crouched beside her, and held out the sign. She looked at it for a long time, ran her fingers over the charred edges, then hugged it to her chest alongside her family. "That was their home," she whispered. "But this is still mine." We didn't say much after that. The ambulance crew started preparing to transport her. Leah lay still but breathing. The puppies nestled against her belly, no longer crying, just resting. Safe. We stayed back, watching, feeling the familiar ache in the chest, that strange combination of sadness and triumph. The kind you only feel when you lose something big, but keep something more important. Later, as we coiled the final hoses and shut the engine doors, I caught Vince standing quietly by the edge of the sidewalk, just watching them drive away. "You all right?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, just," remembering her eyes. That dog. She didn't run. She didn't even try. She stayed. She protected them the only way she could, I said. She gave them a chance. He looked at me. You know, he said, sometimes we come back with nothing. And sometimes we bring back more than we expected. I didn't reply, just placed a hand on his shoulder. Because he was right. The sky was beginning to pale now. A hint of dawn creeping up the horizon. Streetlights flickered. Somewhere, a bird chirped for the first time in hours. The world kept moving, but we stayed in that moment a little longer. Just breathing. Fire had tried to take everything that night, but it didn't win. It had been just over 2 months since that night. Spring had quietly turned into summer. The days grew longer, heavier with heat. Calls kept coming: brush fires, car crashes, false alarms, the usual chaos. We settled back into routine. But that night, when we carried life out of fire, it stayed with us. We didn't talk about it much. Not because we'd forgotten, but because it had sunk too deep. It had become something sacred. Every so often, I'd wonder, how are they? The woman, Leah, the puppies. Had they all made it? Were they safe? Were they loved? We got no updates. Just a short line in a report a few days after the incident. All subjects stable. Mother and pups survived. That was enough. Then, one quiet afternoon in mid-June, as the sun baked the pavement outside the firehouse and the air felt thick with stillness, a dusty minivan pulled up to the front bay. Vince and I were sitting in the shade, sipping water and arguing about a busted radio antenna. We didn't notice her at first. Not until she stepped out. She looked different. Still the same woman from that night, but steadier now. Stronger. There was a quietness in her eyes, but not the panicked kind. The kind that comes after healing. In her arms, she carried a woven basket. And the basket moved. She walked toward us, calm and smiling, and placed the basket on the bench beside us. Inside, curled up on a soft blanket, was a puppy. A light-colored one, with a black patch on one ear and a tail that wagged so fast it blurred. He looked up at us with bright, curious eyes, full of mischief and something else, recognition. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at us both, and finally said, I spent weeks thinking of what to say. But then I realized you already know. We stood frozen. The puppy tried to climb out of the basket, nearly falling. Vince caught him just in time and laughed. He's the wild one, she said, laughing through tears. First to crawl, first to bark. Always getting into trouble. Reminds me of you guys. I bent down and held out my hand. The puppy crawled over, sniffed, then pressed his nose into my palm like it was the most familiar thing in the world. It hit me then. It was him. One of the pups we pulled from the fire. The one that pressed into my glove, barely alive, squeaking under all that smoke and fear. You're giving him to us? I asked, still stunned. She nodded. He's yours, if you'll have him. He was born in that fire. But I want him to grow up in a place where he'll never be afraid again. We didn't hesitate. Vince knelt beside me, rubbing the pup's head. Looks like we've got ourselves a new rookie, he said. What's his name? She asked. We looked at each other. We didn't even have to think. Fire, we said in unison. She laughed, full, honest, healing. It suits him. Before she left, she hugged us both. She told us Leah was doing well, slower now, older, but still strong. That the insurance helped her rebuild. That she was okay. Starting again. She thanked us. For everything. And we just stood there, with a wiggly ball of joy in our arms, feeling like maybe, just maybe, we'd done something right in this world. Fire became part of our crew from that day forward. At first, he was a little menace, chewing on boots, hiding gloves, howling when the alarm went off. But soon he became something more. A presence. A symbol. A reminder. He waited at the door when we came back from tough calls. He slept beside the gear lockers. He curled up near the radio during night shifts and barked at the vacuum like it was pure evil. And every now and then, when the station was quiet and we were alone with our thoughts, he'd come nudge you, just to remind you that you weren't alone. He was born in fire. But now, he was home. Sometimes at night, when the calls are quiet and the engine's been washed for the third time just to kill time, I sit by the front bay doors with a cup of cold coffee and Fire curled up at my feet. He's grown now, solid, confident, the kind of dog that makes people smile when they walk in. But he still lays close, always with one paw touching me. Like he's making sure I'm there, or letting me know that he is. The city lies quiet beyond the road. Some lights blink in apartment windows. A fan hums from a porch 2 blocks over. The sounds of a world at peace. And I sit there, thinking not about flames, not about sirens, not even about loss. I think about the lives we touch. And the ones that touch us. That night still lives inside me. All of it. The heat. The smoke. The sound of her voice. Save them, please. The sight of Leah in the corner, shielding those pups with the last of her strength. I didn't know, going in, what we'd find. None of us did. But we went anyway. That's the part people never see. They see the fire. They see the gear. Maybe the helmet. Maybe the photo on the local news. But they don't see the choice. The one you make every time you step toward heat instead of away. The one that says, someone might be in there, and I'm going in to find them. Fire shifts, stretches his legs, and yawns. His eyes blink up at me, soft and steady. He doesn't know what he means to us. Or maybe he does. We didn't just save him. He saved something in us too. Something we sometimes forget in the chaos. He reminds us of why we do this. Not for medals. Not for paychecks. Not even for stories. But for the chance to make sure someone, somewhere, gets to live. There's a plaque on the wall in the gear room now. One of the guys made it as a surprise. It says, "Born in fire, lives in heart. Station 3's best decision." I think about how far we've come. About the woman who stood in the street screaming that night. About Leah, curled in smoke, refusing to run. About the pup who found us again. And about every call since, where we've stepped into the unknown. Because the truth is, you don't always know who you're saving. You just know someone needs you. Sometimes it's a family. Sometimes a child. Sometimes it's something smaller, but no less sacred. And sometimes it's yourself. The radio crackles faintly from inside the station. A car rolls by. The world is still turning. Still waiting. If the alarm sounds, we'll go again. We'll grab our masks, gear up, and ride into the dark. Because maybe, somewhere, someone is calling for help. And we'll hear them. We always do.